Marc. On the fire shortly. While we're chatting, not going to detract from our fireside chat. I thought it would just be a nice thing, because that's really what we do here in South Africa. When we have a fire, we cook on it. You can't just have a fire without cooking, otherwise why are you making a fire? But I'm going to keep my ear open for that leopard. That might be quarantine male, it might be his brother. Although I can't imagine the brother would be calling if he's up the tree, or near the tree, where his kill is. We've had a really great day with leopards. And for now, actually, as far as questions and things, it'd be nice to get something to talk about in terms of subjects. If you're interested in something on the conservation front, you're welcome to email us with that, so that gives us something to talk about. And as well as we'll be answering questions throughout the next hour in a kind of video conference, kind of video chat around the fire. Just going to remove a blade of grass. Oh, there's a question. Give me a moment. Vicky, Salt Lake City. And Vicky was asking if Conuma or quarantine male, whether either one of them have fathered any cubs yet, or if they're still too young. They are still too young. They would have to be It'll be a couple of years yet before they establish themselves. At the moment, pretty much in a similar way that young male lions have to head out into the wilderness on their own for a little bit, young leopards do too, because it'll reach a stage where almost what has happened now. Unfortunately, the whole process has been interrupted by Karula's cubs being killed by hyena. So there is a little bit of a difference circumstance that we need to take into account now, and it could have other reaching effects on the fact that her two boys are still around, and they might even stay around a little bit longer. They might not, we don't really know. But it's only once they are sort of forced to move on by their own sexual maturity and their fathers, perhaps not only their fathers but other males, protection of their territories, that for fear of their lives these boys will have to move on, and they will probably be bounced around territories for some time before they can carve out a little niche of their own. And it's only once they're able to secure a territory and breed, or rather with that territory have females within their territory, then breed with those females will they father cubs. And it takes a lot to do that, because they've got to mature considerably. There's a long way to go. As a 2-year-old young leopard, he's got to be able to outdo or overthrow. He's got to be able to take care of a male that is sort of 4 or 5 years older than him, maybe even older. And he'll never do it at the age of 2. He's got a lot of scrapping to do to learn how to be a big male leopard, and before he's able to take a territory. So it'll be a while, unfortunately, for them. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot that needs to be done. Beautiful, warm, sunny evening. Very hot, very humid. Tony's asking about fire. Tony comes from Bristol. Tony was asking about fire, whether fire attracts any insects or other larger creatures. Some insects do fly into the fire. The brightness of the fire is nowhere near as bright as artificial light that we create in terms of wattage. So even though fire is fairly, well, it's orange, it's a non-attractive color to insects, but it's not so much about the attractiveness of light. It's much more about the disturbance of an insect's navigational system, for want of a better explanation. Insects are able to navigate by the light of the stars that almost come down vertically from above, and over a million of years that's how they've developed their keen sense of direction, even though some of them are not very good flyers. They still navigate by stars and sun and moon and anything up there that creates light. But they are not affected by anything other than white light. It's only really white light that destroys the navigation. That's why sometimes you can get yellow porch lights for your house, and the yellow light that you put outside your house has far less of an impact, or rather far less of an attractant to the insects. And the whiter your light, the more insects you're going to attract, because it's all about they can't navigate properly, so they have this problem that they inadvertently just continually circle ever so smaller spirals towards the source of the light, because they just cannot fly out of it. So we call it being attracted to light. Insects, unfortunately, they can't stand light. They're not really attracted, they're just drawn. Their compass, their entire navigational, it's like their GPS has gone haywire and it points them in the direction of the source. I hear the vehicle. I hear that Land Rover rumbling down the driveway. So I'll be joined shortly by Scott. Oh.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Hello, Scott. Welcome,
Hey.
bud.
What a beautiful spot that was, eh?
It was indeed.
I did mention on the way in that I did drive down that road yesterday and overlooked it, but that does happen.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside from me.
I was just training the fire as you were coming in, and we didn't forget what we're going to do. Is we're actually going to be putting on some very traditional sausage, which is it's South African. For those of you expats somewhere else in the world, we're having boerewors, good old traditional wors tonight. While we're chatting, we thought, since we're making a fire every week and we're having a fireside chat, let's actually use the fire. I'll let the maestro play and sort out some area there. So, yes, Alex was telling me something as you drove in, so I had to sort of tune him out. Sorry, Alex, because we were saying hi, and you're joining me.
I am going to, I'm just going to get the grid on. Okay. We're going to risk a few flames to start with.
I'd let it heat up first.
Good idea. Good idea.
I think sit down, let's have a chat.
Getting a bit excited here.
Yes, yeah, why? Because you're hungry.
I am hungry,
It's been a long
actually.
day.
I am hungry.
We've had a good cat day.
We have. Another one.
Another one.
We've been so lucky over the last few weeks, few days. So I hope that luck continues.
I hope so. It was hard to sort of digest the fact that we might have missed him yesterday, that he was there.
Yeah.
And I even found tracks early in the morning, and they kind of petered out near Twin Dam, or rather Treehouse Dam, and I'm ashamed that I didn't really investigate much further. We just carried on driving. But it's sometimes, it's the way the cookie crumbles, sometimes the way it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the fact that we don't have trackers does also influence the way we do follow up on tracks, and that's important for the viewers to know. Most of the vehicles out here have got the trackers on board, and that way you can drop the tracker off and let him follow up and investigate and still take the guests and show them a good time, whereas we don't have that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about a tracker is that it gives the person who's driving, which is us or the guide, or us presenters or us guides, having a tracker allows one to concentrate less on the road and more about what's around us and what animals we're likely to be looking at, and not have to concentrate so much on the road itself. Because how many times do we drive around and our eyes are actually on the road a lot, and we're kind of leaving it up to Brian and Viam and Jason, who's on camera, to find things for us, because we...
And they've also got their own job right in front of them, so yeah. But you're right.
Making a noise in front of the microphone. And, well, it's been a good week. I mean, we've had a really good run of elephant. We've had some wonderful times with them. There's actually one, I don't know, did you see him coming in now?
We didn't.
A little bit dark, I think.
We didn't see him coming in or going out, and we did pass here on the way to
I
coming
think he
to
might
you.
have come up from the dam or something.
Okay.
Because he was sort of moving, or maybe he was even behind the lodge, and might have come up from behind Vuyatela, because he was sort of on that corner of quarantine.
Was he a bull that you recognised?
No, he's a youngster.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just a youngster. He's got a hole in his right ear, I noticed that.
Okay.
And he can't be more than 100 yards back there, because he was just standing quietly, sniffing around for marula fruits in the grasses.
Well, as I'm sure you would have experienced on many nights out around the fire, it's not uncommon to have visitors, so with a bit of luck something will pop in to say hello this evening.
Well, we've got a good chance. There's always a greater chance when you're cooking something.
Well, there we go.
At home I very seldom make a fire, other than when I have people. But when I do have a fire and I've got people around, we do cook on it. And there are always different animals that'll come because they'll pick up the scent of it. And we can't be naive to think that animals don't know what the smell of cooking meat is.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
Exactly. Speaking of smelling meat,
Yes.
surely some hyena are going to smell that carcass.
I was thinking the same thing actually. I was on the same page as you. That I'd noticed quite a few hyena tracks on Twin Dams Road this afternoon. They must have been there this morning. And with the way the wind was blowing, they might not have picked it up down there, but they're bound to. But I was also thinking that quarantine male is also downwind.
Yeah.
The Duke.
Yeah.
Also,
I did mention that. Wouldn't it be nice if he came? But I didn't mention that he was downwind. So.
But I think there's a good chance that he might also pick up the scent.
Certainly.
And even how do we know? Maybe he'll even pick up the scent of his brother on top of the scent of that. We don't know how fine-tuned their sense of smell really is, but it's got to be really acute. And although leopard don't really use their sense of smell that much, we know for a fact that they do scavenge, that they do sniff around a lot.
Yeah.
But we've had a few questions actually just before you came in. We had a question about whether or how the boys would react to each other if they came across each other. And it's great to speculate, but it's more wonderful to see it if it really happens.
Exactly.
To be there. Well, we used to go for weeks with Mishu and Induna without them having any contact, and then suddenly they'd be together, and it was almost as if they hadn't been apart. I mean, they just would carry on as normal. Of course, it eventually reached the stage where they no longer were in touch, because I think Mishu went up north. I don't know what happened to the boys, but yeah, just because they were reaching that age that they needed to go and carve out their own, and it wasn't anywhere here that they could have.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's important. It's very important that young males get far away from their home territories, because it's no good ousting your father and being genetically close to the females within your territory, because they'll invariably be your mother and your sisters.
Exactly. Exactly.
Are we getting too much smoke in the camera?
How's the smoky camera there, Vian? Okay?
Okay, there, we'll get a bit more flame out of that now.
Okay. The cameramen are battling, but the shots apparently is okay. Shame.
I didn't think of that.
Good.
Oh, okay. I get that question. I can't remember who it's from. But I'm sure Alex will tell me shortly. But whether predators actually prefer one type of meat over another. I mean, speaking of meat, but it's not really a preference for the meat. It's perhaps a preference for the animal who's holding the meat. But there are some times that it's a kind of a yes or no question, I think, because ostensibly predators are opportunists. They're going to hunt whatever they can hunt, yet there are times when lion will rather go after buffalo than go after something else, and it's not necessarily because they prefer buffalo over others. I think it's more a case of there's more meat on a buffalo.
Yeah.
It lasts them longer, especially when they're cubs.
For sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree, Mark. I think predators will kill the easiest and most reasonable kill depending on how many mouths they have to feed,
Yeah.
you know. So for a leopard, I guess they're different in that whether they kill something small or big, they only have themselves to worry about, and therefore they will take any opportunity, be it big or small, but up to a point where if anything's too big, it would be dangerous.
Yes. But then again, I think leopard also may be one of the... Actually, leopard and cheetah are a bit of an exception, because if I think about it now, look, it never occurred to me to think of this, or this question, so I'm just... Answers are coming to me while I think about it. Leopard actually do sometimes prefer certain things. I've known leopard that really have a penchant for warthog, big male warthog that come barreling out of a burrow on the termite mound, or leopard who have a really soft spot for porcupine.
Okay.
That doesn't sound right, because you can't really have a soft spot for a porcupine.
Yeah.
But yes, from that point of view of them preferring some meat over other, but it's not to say that they're actually going to go out and actively hunt a porcupine, just that if the opportunity presents itself, they're not going to give it up because they really like to eat it.
Yeah.
But not every individual likes to eat porcupine, because not every individual actually knows how to catch a porcupine.
Exactly.
But then there's also cheetah who have preference based on their hunting method and what they've been taught by their mothers more than anything else, because they're taught how to hunt, and it might just be that they learn how to bring down young wildebeest better than they can bring down springbuck, say in Namibia, or that they can chase warthog into certain situations, and they can't do that with impala. So the preference doesn't necessarily come into being a preference for the meat as much as it is for the ease of access to the prey.
For sure. What one interesting kind of animal predator-prey relationship that I've noticed here is that we don't often, or in my history of 3.5 years in the Sabi Sands before starting this job with Wild Earth, I only once ever saw a leopard with a baboon kill. Yet in some areas they hunt them, almost specialize in hunting them, whereas here they almost flee from baboon when they see them. So that's an interesting one that's also played out.
That is very much so. It's almost like there's this war between leopard and baboon, and I've seen times when leopard have been totally and absolutely mobbed by the entire troop, adults, males, females, little ones, to the point of their lives being in danger. So yeah, I agree with you. It's not really a hard and fast rule in any one sort of pocket of Africa that every single animal has its preferences depending on what it's been taught, or what it's learned, or what it's been comfortable with, or how it has found its niche in bringing down its own food. Because I think that's probably going to be one of the hardest things. We don't really appreciate that, being these two-legged creatures that are able to catch our food so easily.
Exactly.
We don't have to run after them, but just that very fact that is the dynamic of having a hunting strategy and having nothing but your tooth and claw and speed and muscle, or lack of either, to be able to make a living and survive. Nice little breeze coming in right now.
Beautiful breeze. And I'm also enjoying the sound of the boerewors sizzling. Boerewors directly translated into English from Afrikaans, which is from Dutch heritage, means farmer sausage. And in a farmer sausage, one expects to find beef sausage, or beef, ground up beef with various spices. Often coriander is one of the key ingredients in a good boerewors, and they really are tasty. So the breeze and the boerewors and the sizzling,
yeah, it's kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
You actually get so many different types of wors. In fact, we have I think it's one of our major beer brands in the country sponsors and actually one of the biggest supermarket brands sponsors a whole boerewors making competition where you have to create your own blend of meat and spices and herbs wrapped in that sausage. Boerewors King or something.
Okay.
get the major prizes. Like they have the Bry Master.
Yeah.
Bry Master barbecue. Bry, you said that, barbecue.
Yeah.
Ellen from Illinois was asking a question, and it kind of got lost in this whole talk about boerewors. So it's weird that all I can really remember is that it was from Ellen in Illinois, Scott. Or rather, Alex is going to have to repeat it. It was most of animals that, or rather Ellen's asking if animals are afraid of fire. Isn't it true that most animals are afraid of fire? I think domestic animals, yes. I think wild animals anywhere in the world, not necessarily that they're afraid of fire as much as that they're very aware of fire. Every single animal, no matter what environment you live in, whether it's your forests of North America or your outback of Australia, I believe actually there's some very severe fires in Australia at the moment, some sort of the worst in decades. I suppose yes, in a sense animals are afraid of fire, but everything has adapted to the presence of fire. Every single animal has somehow an instinctive reaction to what fire is and how to deal with fire. And I've seen animals that are able to take a benefit or rather just benefit from recent fires and use it to their own advantage. And there are a whole host of those, everything from giraffe and zebra to some of the raptors and small birds of prey to fork-tailed drongos.
Yeah, the birds often during the fire.
Right in front of the flames, in fact, you find birds because of the wave of insects that are chased. Let's not sort of confuse the issue. When a fire does ravage through the bushveld, there are a lot of animals that flee that fire because they know they're going to get burnt if they stand still. But what I'm saying is that they don't necessarily fear the fire, they just fear the consequences of the fire. And so they know they have to escape it. But fire is not a strange concept to them. Fire is the very thing that drives most environments in the world, in a lot of places, where the seeding of trees and the whole cycle of life needs fire. I mean, Cape is one of them.
For sure. The other thing that I think contributes to fire being associated to protection when out in wilderness areas is that simply the light given off would make any predator or animal feel less comfortable in possibly creeping up on you because it doesn't have the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
So I think the light that's given off is a lot of what aids us in terms of protection when out in the bush, that you may get a little bit of, yeah.
But I think also animals are very aware of a static fire. I've noticed that, having had so many fires and lived around fires, is that there's a very big difference to how animals react to a fire in a fireplace like this or a wildfire out there.
Yep.
I live in a place where I have fires on numerous occasions or on different occasions, and I have no fences around me. And there are times when certain animals will be around there, whether there's fire or no fire. In fact, there are times when I'm sitting around the fire that I'll even have civet and hyena come up to the fire and come and sniff around, because they are very aware of what the fire contained as it is, what it represents, because they've learnt that that's what humans do, and there's often some scavenging some scavenging to be done. But they can smell it. But I've also had impala doing overnight walking trails in other parts of Africa where the fire is everything, because we come back from a walking safari late in the afternoon after walking most of the day, and you've got a fire burning, the camp is set up, and it's just this really basic little camp, and the fire is what we cook on, it's what we cook, what we heat the water on for the showers. The fire is everything that maybe when we harvested fire or harnessed fire and what we learned we could do with it, that's the basics of just making hot water and cooking food and giving light, as you say, and to some degree protection. I mean, animals are not going to attack, as Scott says, or take a chance, because there's a fire and the light can give them away fairly easily. But by the same token, some of them don't really care. They still move through. I mean, I've had elephant and hippo and all sorts of animals move through a camp, even though we've had a fire sort of smouldering and burning all night. They can see that it is in one place. My Dutch is not very good. My Afrikaans is bietjie beter as my Nederlands. Maar ek gaan Engels praat.
Well done.
Spreek. Ja, ek wil Engels spreek. So everybody can understand. And what it is that the web spinning spiders, first of all, it's the web that they make. It's the type of silk that they use to spin their webs. And every area of the web that they need to walk on is a special type of silk that doesn't have sticky threads to it. It's just like a strong cable, a very strong cable for a spider. And they will never walk on the spiral part of the web, the one that's very, very sticky silk. And that's the silk that catches the insects. The spider doesn't walk on that silk. The spider only walks on the silk that makes like the spokes of the wheel, and then the outer part of the web and the very center of the web. But the other thing about the spider is that she's got, and it's normally only females that make the web, but she's got two claws that almost like, because it's a cable, it's almost like they clamp over that cable. And there are hairs around them that as soon as it feels the cable or feels the silk, the claws clamp, so that when she lifts the leg and she touches the next piece of silk, the claws clamp over the cable. And that's why you sometimes find some of the web spinning spiders caught in the bathtub or caught in a sink or caught in something, because they have these specialized claws for their web, but if they're in a really smooth surface they can't climb up it as much as the hunting spiders that have very special pads to their feet.
Well, I'm glad you answered that question, Mark, because I think you did a very good job at it.
Good.
And I enjoyed it.
Okay. Good. Yeah, well, they're tiny now. Yes, they're actually starting to become noticeable now.
Yeah. So
they are towards the end of the month. We might start seeing them getting a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I saw a decent-sized garden orb, which is a relative of the golden orb, which we see more commonly out here as they get bigger. So hopefully, though, in the coming weeks, we will be able to try and show you these spiders that we are talking about. Boerewors is looking good.
Good,
There's nothing
because
to worry
I'm starting
about
to get him. I'm not allowed to eat boerewors, but I'm sure going to try it tonight. One of the few things I had to give up, and I'm so sorry about it. But every now and then I cheat, and I eat some, because that's boerewors. You grow up being a South African, you grow up with boerewors. Who on earth doesn't eat boerewors if you're a South African?
Exactly.
But yes, sorry, Alex, I didn't get any of that. Unfortunately, I should probably change.
Oh,
Kentucky.
firework display.
Marsha in Kentucky, a lovely question from Marsha in Kentucky, wanting to know if each of the reserves, these private nature reserves that we have on the western edge of Kruger, like the Sabi Sand, I guess, Marsha, you're also referring to the Timbavati and Kleseri, Olifants, etc., etc. Marsha was asking, do these reserves have individual wardens or caretakers or conservationists to take care of the individual reserves, monitoring populations, etc., etc.?
Yeah, they certainly do. And I mean, initially they were all managed privately, I guess, because a lot of them were all fenced in.
That's right, yeah.
So,
yeah. And a lot of them actually just with the same wardens or generations of those wardens just continued managing, because some of the guys I know, especially the warden of Kleseri Game Reserve up just next to the Timbavati, Colin, who's the warden there, actually grew up in the Timbavati. He grew up almost next door to me. His father was sort of the general manager of a big property, 2 properties away from us. And Colin grew up there, and now he's the warden of the Kleseri. So there are a bunch of guys that have grown up in the area and that are now part of it. In fact, they're wardens, they're ecologists. There are a few of the reserves that have different wildlife studies that they're currently doing in some of the private reserves. I know of the Ground Hornbill project. Do you know about that?
I don't actually.
Okay. Well, it's now extended into the APNR, which is the Associated Private Nature Reserves of Kleseri, Timavati, and Neelmabat, and probably going into Belule.
Okay.
Kate and Cassie Carstens, I think it is, because they got married. So I think they're the ones that are operating the ground hornbill project, and they're monitoring ground hornbill nests. And there's also another bigger project to that, where they're actually breeding them, captive breeding of ground hornbills, and releasing them, the sub-adults, into the wild.
Really?
But breeding them in a way that they breed the whooping cranes and the condors and other large birds using hand puppets.
Okay.
So that they don't imprint onto humans. But there's the elephant, the elephant project. I mean, that's ongoing, and it even affects here in the Sabi Sand. SaveTheElephants.org, Michelle's project, where there are a bunch of collared elephants. And I suppose a lot of maybe smaller projects, but they overall management of the reserves. Each reserve does have a warden and a subcommittee of people that take care of the ecology. And all of that in conjunction with Kruger, because it's all part of Kruger now.
Yeah.
So Kruger does have an overall say in what goes on.
Exactly. Which is wonderful that there is one governing body that oversees all the different reserves that are associated with the Kruger. And as I mentioned earlier, what's important to realize is the reserve we are now was not always open to the Kruger National Park. So this used to be fenced in completely. I forget exactly when they dropped the fence.
92, 93.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. And as are a lot of reserves that are attached to the Kruger National Park on the western boundary. And they're big areas, and they do need a lot of eyes and ears and management. So it's great in a way that the Kruger oversees the general movements of what goes on, but that each of these private reserves look after themselves and manage their own anti-poaching units and fund their own anti-poaching units, because for Kruger to do all of that would have been impossible.
It would, but and then there's also the environmental side, or rather the habitat side. There's the whole concept of not micromanaging all these different properties, all these different little reserves in a sort of a microcosm.
Yeah.
Rather than what it is now is that everything is now incorporated into Kruger. So there's an overall management policy on how wildlife is dealt with, or rather the management of wildlife, how we manage wildlife in our current state, as we know how it is these days. It's a lot different. I mean, we still learning. It's a learning process that we still have to learn. I think it needs to be less hands-on and more allowing nature to let itself do what it needs to do to some extent, especially with an area. The larger the area, the more one can just let it go.
Exactly.
We just want to interfere all the time.
Yeah.
I wonder who's driving around. Maybe it's one of the...
I wonder.
Scott,
they're not coming towards us, which is a good thing, slowly, with the spotlight, because
true.
that could mean there was an animal on the way, which actually would be great, so it wouldn't be a problem.
I still think my Ellie will come and visit. What's your Pardon?
It is right behind us.
Oh, the Ellie's behind us.
Really? Would you be able to get a shot of it if we shone the torch on it?
No, you can't shine a torch on an Ellie.
Just in the general area, Mark.
What's your favourite season?
My favourite season would be the change of winter into summer. So neither summer nor winter, but spring, I guess.
Jack,
So
I think it wasn't Marsha.
So that kind of transition would be my favourites. And if I had to choose winter over summer, I probably would choose winter. I love the fact that in winter you are less constrained by the heat. You can spend the whole day out and the whole night out, provided you're warm enough at night, watching animals, whereas in summer I feel, even though there's more stuff around, all of the reptiles, the insects, a lot of the migratory birds, the heat does make it a little bit tricky out here. So I hope that answers your question.
Was it Mark Place? I can't remember who that was. Alex will tell me shortly who that was from. But It was a nice question because
I don't know, Mark. What about you? I mean, there's pros and cons to every season.
Well, that I think is what I was going to say. Is that that's exactly how I feel. It's what you make up on one season, you're going to lose in another. I mean, what we make up for in summer, we lose out for being summer. There is the listlessness of really hot days and humidity, and I agree, it gets hot. I love the heat. I can't stand the cold. Every day that I drive here in the morning, I think how lucky I am that we're not driving from Manyeleti in the middle of winter.
Oof, that would be a disaster.
Because it would be a 2-hour drive, or we'd have to rig up some sort of windshield. But I'm not a cold person. But I love the winter. I love the winter for its dryness. I love it for its silence. I love it for its sunsets, the colors of the sky. So it's very much of what you might gain on one hand. Also, there's the fewer leaves on the trees, the ability to see things deeper into the bush, to follow things easier. The grasses are lower. There are a bunch of things about winter. There are a bunch of things about summer. There's the unmistakable and unforgettable and irreplaceable time of the year when everything starts to blossom and bloom, and spring starts happening before the rains even come, and suddenly there are flowers and insects and all sorts of things popping out. That is a very narrow period of time that is exceptionally special because your temperatures are sort of mild anyway.
Yeah.
But it can't be a favorite because there are times of the year that can be just as fantastic.
Exactly. Like, even though I said I'd choose winter over summer if I had to choose one, I love snakes, and your chance of seeing one in winter, and the insects and the birds, there's just so much that you'd miss out on without all the seasons. So, yeah, not an easy one.
Okay, well, to play devil's advocate, but then in winter, everything's concentrating around the water hole. Everything is sort of there in one place. You don't have to drive around much.
Exactly. Tracking becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. So
and I love tracking, as do you.
Yeah.
Getting off and following animals' tracks off the road, and that's when it becomes really challenging. But in summer, sadly, all of the pathways...
I just laughed around. When it starts drying up, it's like hard packed, and... Well, we're not saddened bushmen. We can't track that well.
Yeah, we amateurs relative to those guys. Yeah, they can track butterflies.
Yeah. So I think we could probably sit here and we could think of all the wonderful things that come with summer, or any season for that matter. But then think of all the things that we'll miss out on because it's that season. So I think it's, for me personally, I don't need to conclude. For me personally, it's like so many other things. It's hard to have a favorite. Every time of the year is fantastic.
I agree.
But you like the cooler weather, I like the warmer.
Exactly. I don't mind the heat, but I'd prefer to be on a beach and not necessarily working, where you can just relax and do as you please. So that for me is a better option for the hot climates. Not that I'm not loving every second of this, and it's hot every day. So
I understand. I do. I understand.
The thing is with heat is that you can only make yourself so cool or take off so many layers. In winter,
not have any layers.
With technology and the equipment these days, you can get warm. You know, even if you're in Alaska, Antarctica, it doesn't matter where, cold places.
There's technology.
Yeah, the technology helps us to keep warm these days. So.
Well, then it becomes a claustrophobic issue.
Well, you would battle, and that I understand, because you are a less is more person when it comes to clothing.
I am indeed, yeah. But I think it's also a case of, if it were to be cold and snowy, I would be limited to how much time I can spend inside in a confined space.
No, but you wouldn't have to, because you can just get warm clothes. You can go outside. Tracking leopard in the snow, wouldn't that be nice?
A snow leopard?
Would that be worth putting on some warm gear for?
That would be a bucket list type of thing. I think that would be, yes, definitely. I think that would be something that I could do for snow leopards. Or a woman.
Understandable.
You understand that.
I understand.
Go to the ends of the earth for a woman or a snow leopard. Question, once again, I'm sorry, but I missed the name, and it was about how traffic is regulated in Kruger. James, thank you. James was asking how traffic at sightings is regulated in Kruger.
It's a good question. It's organised chaos.
Yeah,
is the best way to put it.
Well, no, it's even disorganised chaos.
Yeah,
I think it's sort of first come, first served, and if you're in a good spot, you stay there. And then some people just park there for the hope that they're going to get a glimpse of something, because the whispers have gone down the cars, and so you can get 100 cars at a sighting. There is absolutely no control in Kruger. There is no radio network. It's impossible to connect every single vehicle driving around Kruger, so you can't sort of say that this person must leave, and everybody's paying the same amount of money. Everybody's got every right to be there in that particular place. I think it's sometimes like you might find a bear at the bottom of the bowl in Yosemite or something.
Yeah, it is a tricky thing, and almost, I mean, how it would be impossible or very difficult, not impossible, it would be very difficult for the Kruger to marshal or manage sightings. There are traffic cops. Can you hear something there?
That's the elephant. He's calling me.
Okay.
I'm coming. Can you hear him flapping his ears? Sorry.
So yeah, there are traffic police in the Kruger, which is necessary because a lot of the Kruger has tar roads which allow people to travel faster than they possibly should be. So the speed limit's 30 miles an hour.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly, in the Kruger, and there are speed cops who will catch you if you speed. But other than that, they have no way of managing actual sightings. But thankfully, with, again, technology these days, people can just take a photograph with a cell phone if anybody is misbehaving or being unfair, and they can report them to the park officials. And it does happen that if people are out of line, they get
banned from the park.
Yeah, they get banned from the park. So there are heavy repercussions for misbehaving out there, and just as well, because people could get a bit excited out there with all this open space and wild animals. So understandably, there needs to be a bit of control.
Well, they're actually very, very strict with the speed regulations, but they tend to mostly only really start trapping closer to the times. They're very strict gate times in the camps in Kruger. So by sunset, no vehicles are actually allowed to be driving around on the roads in Kruger. And so the time that they're going to be trapping is the time when they're most likely going to be catching people rushing back to camps. But I think that's actually quite amazing, the whole onset of social media and what social media is doing. And we've had Nadav here recently, who created a wonderful app called Kruger Sightings that has done revolutionary things for what we do here on the radio that does on a smartphone. In that people post sightings wherever in Kruger, and if you have the app and if you have at least some of the understanding of how things work, it does tend to alleviate some of the traffic in sightings, because you can see that, okay, well, if there might be lion here, but I know that there are lions somewhere else with fewer cars or less traffic on a different road, that you can go to a different sighting. So what that sort of thing does is it also helps to police those very sightings. As you say, there are people now that are taking photos of people who are misbehaving, and so the people are policing themselves, really, because there are people that are spending a lot and not only time and money, but they're just spending a lot of their own emotional. Excuse me.
You got a visitor.
Yeah. But I'll just have to chew on it. My fingers aren't cleaner than the insect.
It's a starter before the boerewors.
But that it becomes important to make sure that you're experiencing something as best you can, and when people spoil it, you've only got you have every right to sort of call them on it.
Yeah.
And it's the only way to get rid of those people who don't follow the rules and actually misbehave or mistreat the wildlife.
Yep.
Craig in Salt Lake City, if I can elaborate on the likelihood of finding any cheetah. Excuse me while I'm doing some alien invasion control. Craig, every moment of every day there's a likelihood of driving around a bend or driving up to cheetah cutline or buffels or cutline, or just coming around a bend at a dam and finding cheetah. Every day the possibility is exactly the same. Every moment the possibility is the same. Of course, the likelihood of it varies depending on where cheetah have been seen outside our boundaries. And in fact, for the last couple of weeks, there have been 2 cheetah up on Buffels Hook. And because they've been up there and they are moving around quite a bit, it could happen at any moment. We could go on our morning drive tomorrow, hit Buffels Hook cutline, or find them lying somewhere off of Buffels Hook Dam. We could be on Impala Plains or up near Sandy Patch, where we know cheetah to come through from the big dam on Buffels Hook, where we've seen cheetah before. And it's really all about whether our timing is right. We've come close. I remember seeing cheetah tracks there the one day that cut across the corner of the property from that top end of where the gate is at Gowrie, cutting across onto Elephant Plains.
Okay.
And it was just brief. They weren't. I don't know. We don't have their radio channel, so we don't know where they were picked up there. But it was a while ago. But it is something we get asked often, whether we do see cheetah and what the likelihood is. The likelihood is very high. We could find them on drive, or we could go another 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We could go another couple of months without seeing cheetah. The bush is very, very thick in this part of the Sabi Sand at the moment. We have that in our, or rather as a disadvantage. Even here on this open area, it's a little bit long, the grasses. Cheetah are not going to really come and hunt here. Maybe they will.
They will before the end of the month, is my prediction.
Good. I'm glad you're positive about it.
I don't mind who sees it, as long as it gets seen.
I'd like to think the same thing, that by hook or by crook, by the time we wrap up in a couple of weeks' time, I think we'll get cheetah. We have to. Because I think that where it's been nearly 2.5 months we've been broadcasting, we haven't had cheetah on Western Gowrie.
No.
So it's time.
Yeah.
In fact, the longer we go, every day that we don't have cheetah increases the likelihood that the next day there'll be cheetah.
Exactly. And the wild dog are actually due back soon, I believe.
Well,
I must just check my diary.
There was talk on them on the radio.
Okay.
I heard smatterings of Madach, and that must have been either Torchwood or Buffels Hook.
Okay,
so
good.
I think we've sort of formulated a plan for the next couple of days to keep track of the boundaries.
Yeah.
Places like Buffels Hook boundary and Cheetah Cutline and Gowrie Main, and well, I suppose Triple M as well for that matter. And we'll keep track of things like cheetah and wild dog, and very close together in size and shape of spoor, but subtle differences.
Yeah.
And maybe we can show you. Okay, now I'm starting, my mouth is watering. I'm going to have to tuck into that, and I think you have to too. We also got to pack all of this up and say goodnight. So I'm going to let you do that. And then
Well, thanks very much for joining us here this evening and this afternoon for those of you who are with us on drive. Another successful adventure in the bush. Wonderful. With the animals really providing us with some great sightings. So thanks very much from myself and Brian, who was on camera with me today, and thanks to Alex, who's down in the control room. And we will keep a piece of Boerewors for him. We will not finish it. We will take some down for him. So don't worry, Alex. We've got you sorted there. So from me, goodbye. Thank you.
And from me and Wim on camera for me, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Okay, bury time.
Bury time. Break it up. Share it up.